Yeah, so we had a question from a customer asking if there's a way to vary the profit target based on the stop loss distance, right? So in other words, if your stop loss, is like if it's a 10 tick stop loss, then take that 10 ticks and multiply it by 2 or multiply it by 1.5, whatever, So if on one trade, your stop loss ends up being a 10 tick stop loss, then the profit target would adjust automatically to a 20 tick stop loss if you wanted to use a 1-to-2 ratio, right, between the stop loss and profit target. Now, of course, if your stop loss is variable, that must mean that you're using an indicator, right, to vary your stop loss distance, much like an ATR, right? So before I get going too in depth here, let's pull up BlackBird so we can have something to look at here. So we're going to go to our strategies window. All right, go into Shark, and then there's BlackBird, and let's enable it. All right, there we go. All right, so let's open up the settings window. And let's get an order started here. All right, so let me just I'll use the ATR settings here because it makes a good example here of how we can do this. All right, so back to the premise of the indicator here, right? So if your stop loss is changing from one trade to another, then that must mean that you're using an indicator. So you could possibly be using, the indicator value mode here. And so, like, for example, a lot of people like to use let's go down here, the super trend. There we go. So a lot of people like using the super trend, right? And so if you're using an indicator, then the distance of your stop loss, from when the order gets executed is going to change all the time because you never know where that super trend indicator is going to be plotting when your trade signals, happen, right? So, yeah, or you might be using an indicator down here in the offset section. So for example, right, the ATR, if you want to create an ATR based stop loss offset. So yeah, so if you want to adjust your profit target distance, a better way to phrase this is if you want your profit target distance to be some ratio of your stop loss distance, then what's needed is you'll need to use an indicator that works inside of the offset section here, right? So with the long factors, a factor is a multiplier, right? So for example, this profit target is a 2 ATR. So we're taking the ATR value from that indicator and we're multiplying it by 2. So we have a long factor of 2 and of course a short factor of -2. Right, so with this factor basically creates a ratio. So our profit target is a ratio, a value of 2, and then our stop loss here is 1.5. So we have a 1.5 ratio to 2, a 1.5 to 2 ratio, right? So that is how you can. So if you're using an indicator up here in the indicator value section, so this indicator would need to be adjusted to provide the offset distance such as that an ATR provides, right? So the big differences between the super trend and the ATR indicator is the super trend plots a fixed price value, right? So it, here, let's put that on the chart. Yeah, let's go put that indicator on the chart here. Let's put the two indicators on the chart. Okay, so there is the super trend. And then let's also put the ATR on there as well. And I'll knock this up to a 20 period so it matches BlackBird. All right, there. So let's pull this. Oh, I didn't save the settings. Let's do this again here. So 2 ATR profit target, a 1.5 ATR stop loss, and then, oh, actually I was using the stop loss as my example here. So we'll open up the initial placement and set the mode to indicator value. And yeah, there we go. So there's the AMA super trend, right? So as I was explaining, the big difference between the super trend and the ATR is that, right, the super trend is giving us a price value, whereas the ATR, that is giving us an offset value, right? So we can see it's 0.5, right? Yeah, the ATR is roughly somewhere around 0.5. So that is literally an offset value. And actually the ATR is printing in terms of points. So let's see here. Yeah, so this is the RTY instrument, right? And a 5 range bar. So the RTY, 1 point is 10 ticks, right? So there's 10 ticks within 1 point. And so obviously a 5 tick range bar is half a point. So that's why the ATR is adjusting around inside this half a point range. Yes. So bottom line is, right, the ATR is outputting in terms of points. And so BlackBird is, taking the ATR value in points, converting it to ticks, and then applying an offset. So if you wanted, to get your profit target to adjust itself automatically based on the stop loss distance, then what you need to use is an indicator that works inside of the offset section. So again, let me go back to the super trend as a kind of classic example. So the super trend would need an additional output. It would need an additional output similar to what the ATR is. So the indicator, the super trend indicator, would need to calculate the offset distance. In other words, from the close of the bar down to so the distance from the close of the bar down to the indicator. That distance in terms of points would need to be an output from the super trend indicator. And in that situation, we could then use the super trend down here in the offset section. And so that is how we can get the profit target to be an exact ratio, and the profit target will constantly adjust its offset distance based on the stop loss's offset distance. There we go.